Okay, Laura, I would have just hand it to you. And if you don't mind, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, as she said, I write fantasy and YA, usually for young adult. I've written some middle grade. Um, I am currently I live in the Charlotte area of North Carolina. I'm actually going to be moving up to Pennsylvania in a few weeks. But I am a mom of three girls. I've got four cats. My favorite things are coffee and books, obviously, and I enjoy crocheting. So yeah, I on my Instagram, I kind of joke around that it's all about, coffee, chocolate, cats, books, anything like that. If you want to connect with me, I love to talk about that all the time. So yeah. So that's a little bit about me. I do have two books in my first series out through L2 Publishing, and the third one will be out next year. And then I've got a middle grade novel. It's a mystery that I self-published, and that's going to be the first in a series. So I certainly would enjoy talking to you about that if you have any questions about the whole traditional publishing versus self-publishing in the question time. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I am going to be talking about character development. It's going to be a little different from last month because I'm going to be focusing more on the young adult and the middle grade age groups, and then also a little bit more to the fantasy or science fiction genres. So if I don't know if Josh is able to hear me, if he can put any of the slides up, but if the slides do not appear, don't worry, I'll go ahead and read the title of each section so that you can take notes if you'd like. But the first section I wanted to discuss about creating captivating characters would be motives versus goals. The motive is ultimately justifying the reason for the main character's quest, or the multiple main characters' quest. In YA and middle grade, there are going to be different motives than what an adult novel would be, and you really need to think about that before you begin your plotting process. You're going to kind of have to dive into the mind of a young adult reader, which we usually say young adult is between 12 and 18 years of age, although we know that older readers will read that as well. And middle grade is usually ages 8 to 12. You really need to dive into their minds to shape the motivation and the goals, because they are going to be different. And if you're not appealing straight to that reader, you're going to lose them very quickly. So you need to ask yourself, what's going to be important to a young adult or a young reader's world? What is going to be big inside of their world specifically? It's not going to be exactly the same as an adult. They may not be out to save the world, but as in the case of my middle grade detective series, the big thing for them is that they want their class party to happen, and they're not allowed to have it because something in the classroom goes missing. That doesn't seem very important to adults, but it's really important to, a 10 or 11-year-old. They want their class party. So that is the motivation to have them go out and solve the mystery. So that's the first thing you want to think about. As far as motivation overall, you just need to remember it has to be personal to that character. So you can't have them going out. Again, I'm just using the example of saving the world if it's not personal to them. So why are they going on their quest? Is it because they really want to find a cure for this disease, or is the motivation because their mother or their father has that disease? Does that make sense? So you really have to make it more personal to that character to send them out on their quest. Now, the goals are a little different from the motivation, just simply because these are the steps that they're going to take to get. The motivation is going to carry them all the way to the end of their quest, but the goals are the little steps. So usually there are some major turning points within the plot of the book. And this is the spot where their goals may change. And so these, again, are just the steps to get them where they want to be at the end. And those may change. That's perfectly fine. The motivation stays the same. So make sure that stays the same. It pushes the goals and the motivation push through to the end climax. So the next bullet point I'm going to hit is choosing your voice. And you want to make sure you choose this well, especially for young adult, middle grade, and then even with fantasy and sci-fi, if you're going to be writing that type of novel. Now, your voice, I know it's kind of difficult to know what a writer's voice is, but it's going to be unique to you. It's basically the way that you write, that when you go and pick up a book in a bookstore or two books and you read them side by side, they're going to sound a little different just because each of us are unique and we're going to have our own flair how we write. But going beyond that, to go a little deeper within the voice, you have choices to make. So one of them would be if you want to use first person versus third person, or if you want to write in present tense versus past tense. What you choose to do will shape the entire mood of the story, and ultimately it's going to reflect the character's personality. So you might want to go ahead and take some time to write maybe a page of a specific scene in both ways, third person past, first person present, just to see how it reads as far as your young adult or middle grade audience. I can go ahead and let you know that most fantasy and sci-fi does work in third person past overall. That's what the majority of the books are going to be when you pick them up. And this translates well for middle grade as well. Middle grade readers, the younger readers, are used to reading a lot of books in the third person past. And so that's going to resonate with them really well. When you get a little older into young adults, this is when they prefer the first person. I'm not sure why it resonates better with them. It's possible that the first person present tense just makes them feel like they're more that heroine or that hero, and they are that main character. I'm not sure what drives it, but I do know that first person present for right now works. But my suggestion to you would be, before you make a final decision, go ahead and do a little research on your target audience and your genre, because the world of writing is always changing. Like every 6 months, there's kind of some new things that come out. So certainly research that. The next bullet point is to have a slow reveal. I know that it's kind of the cliche thing to say, don't do an info dump, which of course no one wants to read an info dump of all this information. But another reason for that slow reveal is just simply going to be because you're going to keep that reader coming back, because we've revealed a little bit of this character here, and now in the next chapter, we learn a little bit of their backstory. And then in the next chapter, we're learning a little bit of their present family life. And it's so important to do this slow reveal, especially with middle grade and young adult, because I don't want to say it's more challenging to keep their attention, but as adults, I think we're kind of prepared emotionally to sit down and say, I'm going to read a book today. And we may sit down and read half the book. We may read the whole thing in one sitting. Whereas especially middle grade readers are going to have a little bit of time restraint. They're probably going to think of it one chapter at a time. So if you do this info dump at the beginning, you're going to lose their attention and want to come back to the book. So make sure you're doing a little bit of slow reveal about each character within each chapter. All right. The next bullet point is to create conflict, which we all know, create conflict. This is the thing that's always said, you need external conflict, you need internal conflict, but it's going to be a little different for the younger audience. So the external conflict, of course, is the goal that character is trying to reach. By the end, it's the force that they're fighting against to try and get to that end, right, to that final climax. But there are internal conflicts going on at the same time, and this is what is shaping the character to change by the end. So generally, you've got your character at the beginning. There's going to be some sort of flaw or something that's keeping them from attaining their final goal, and they're fighting throughout the whole book. And by that end, each turning point, each major thing that happens is going to shape the character's personality internally a little bit more, so that they're changing. And usually in that final climax, there is going to be some sort of big decision that character has to make. And it will be a different decision that they would have made at the very beginning of the book. And that's the big thing you need to ask yourself. So when it comes to middle grade characters, if you think about that age, they're in a time where they're exploring. They know that they're leaving childhood and they're approaching teenagehood, but they're not quite there yet. So there's going to be a lot of exploring. There's going to be some risk taking because they are now taking steps away from that full parental control over them. But within the story, there's still going to be that desire that they have to want to please the adults in their life. It doesn't just have to be parents. It can be teachers. It can be mentors, whoever. They're still going to want to please them. So you're going to see possibly part of the internal conflict is them bouncing back and forth between this, I'm going to explore and do something on my own, but now I'm afraid of getting in trouble. I know that the right thing to do is this. I better play it safe and stay over here. And that is what's going to create some interest within your character, your middle grade characters, is that back and forth. Now, for YA, it gets a little deeper because now that they're full teenagers, they're all about the risky behavior because they feel that they have that immortality complex, right? They feel like nothing's going to touch them, nothing will be bad. So now this creates a bit more drama and a bit more interest because now they're really out there doing risky behavior. And so there may be other characters that have to pull them back. They're not thinking about pleasing anyone. They don't care about that. But it may be another character that has to pull them back to reality and say, this is the wrong direction you're going in. And then that main character may go in that direction and discover that that other person was right. And then they turn around and come back. So just remember that a young adult's hormones are kind of all over the place, and they may very well go bounce back and forth between good and bad. Should I do this? Should I do that? The one thing you want to keep in mind is to stay consistent with that young adult writing, because even though they have the hormones that are making them kind of go flip-flop back and forth, they still need to stay consistent within their character, because if you make it too broad as far as their decisions, I'm going to go completely right now, I'm turning around going left completely, it's going to make the character look a little wishy-washy. So you just need to make sure that you stay consistent with that. And this is a spot where you might want to go ahead and use some beta readers or have some friends read the work with you, just to make sure that you are staying consistent with your characters. So the next bullet point is going to be backstories. This is the best way to not have two-dimensional characters. We want three-dimensional characters, right? This is going to give them life. Every character has a backstory. And the best suggestion I give is when you flesh their backstory out, just don't aim to try and get the entire backstory in the book, in writing. It may not pertain to the story. And to tighten your writing, you need to make sure that you only include what's important. But on the flip side, you do need to know that character's full backstory, because in your mind, it will help you really make them 3D. And so as you're writing their reactions, their dialogue, it's going to make them more real, even though the reader doesn't know the whole backstory. So that's something to keep in mind. Knowing their past helps the writer make them more believable in the now and the future. The reader will only see a ridiculously joyous character or perpetually melancholic character. They're reading that. But if you as a writer in your mind know the reasoning for that, as you write it, you don't have to give the reason for that. You're going to make it believable to the reader, so they don't have to know why this character is so positive all the time, right? Okay, the next bullet point, I've got two more, would be to paint a picture. And what I mean by this is there's the obvious things that we want to do when we're introducing a character, which is everyone wants to just gravitate towards that physical description. What color are their eyes? What color is the hair? What shape is their mouth? And that's fine. Those are all fine. But creating a physical description, especially of a character, goes beyond that. Take it a step further. What are the physical traits that will stand out to not only the reader, but then to the other characters within the book, right? Does this character have a limp? Maybe maybe you don't even talk about what their hair color, eye color is. You let the reader kind of decide that. But the main thing you want to bring across is they have a limp, or they have a tic or an eye twitch. How is this person walking? Are they walking perfectly straight with perfect poise, where you would say, do they have a background in ballet? Or are they completely hunched over for multiple reasons? Maybe it's a girl that's 6 foot tall, her shoulders are always down. That's going to tell you right there, she has low self-confidence, right? She's anxious about the fact that she's so tall. Or it could be something physical that's making them hunched over, that's from an illness or something. So giving those characteristics will help tell something deeper about that character's personality to the reader. Other ideas would be, does the character prefer to go barefoot? Are their shoes well worn? These are all things that you can allow the reader to see, and then it's also going to tell you something about them. Another thing to dive into when you're specifically writing for middle grade or young adult would be, how is the person going to look to them? Because if you're talking about a 12-year-old character, with all respect, if you're over 20, you're old to them. You know what I mean? Any character is going to be old. You can't just have a 12-year-old say, oh, it was an old man, old girl, whatever, woman, because they're going to think 30 is old. So you need to give a little bit more information from their point of view, but that will describe that character better. What stands out? Oh, specifically their lack of fashion. What would be another thing that would stand out to a middle grade or a high schooler would be their constant nagging. If an adult is nagging or yelling, they're going to focus more on those things than other things that an adult character would focus on. And it's perfectly fine to bring those things out, because that's the reader that you're trying to reach. So, and then finally, the last bullet point is going to be develop secondary characters. And so the idea behind this is just like your main characters. You want to make sure your secondary characters are just as well developed with the background stories, with their internal, external conflicts. You do want them to have a motivation as well. Even if it's not the main motivation that's taking over the whole plot, they do have a motivation. And you need to get that out there. One of the best suggestions I can give for middle grade and YA would be taking care to not make your characters too cliche. It has kind of in the past been a thing, it's a middle grade story, so the villain's the bad guy. And that's well and good for in the past, but the writing industry is changing a bit, and the publishers are kind of expecting a little more. And so let's take that villain a little deeper. Don't make it quite as cliche. Make that villain maybe a little bit more human, maybe a little bit more like you or me or your next door neighbor. And when you give the villain or the antagonist a personality that is reflective of someone that could be in their life, that isn't necessarily a bad guy, but just has either bad ideas or a bad motive for that main character, it's going to make the readers a little bit more in tune with that. It's going to make the readers maybe empathize a little bit with the villain or the antagonist, which is a good thing, because that just means you've done a really good job of developing your characters, including the villain. Okay, so the next section I'm going to talk about is taking it a step further to make your characters 3D. And so there's just a few ideas you can do specifically for middle grade and young adult. They are drawn right now to the visual. So if you have Pinterest, I don't know if you've got a Pinterest account or not, but if you can get one as an author account, establish it, create Pinterest boards for whatever books you're working on. It doesn't have to be published. It doesn't have to be out there. Whatever you're working on, create the Pinterest boards, label it with the title of your book, and go ahead and save some pictures of the characters, of what you would imagine they look like, and the scenery, the world building. Do that, because you can refer to that in your social media, on your Facebook author page. You can say, hey, go on over to my Pinterest account and check it out. And that is going to draw in those young adult and middle grade readers for sure. Another thing would be to think about was if you have any sort of music connection playlist, whether it's Apple Music or Spotify, if you have songs that are going through your head that represent a character, go ahead and create that playlist and put it out there and let your audience know, this is what this is the song I hear when I'm thinking of this character, because again, that's going to pull them in. And if you do this before the book is out, you're creating a base audience already. They're already there with you. They're like, oh, this is going to be a cool character because they listen to whatever, Metallica or whatever. I don't know what it could be. So that's another fun thing to do. I know in the past, it's already been suggested that you use profile sheets to create your characters, which is great. I know that they're on the internet. There are character archetypes that you can use, which again will be great. I do want to suggest a website for character archetypes, and that is specifically for middle grade and YA writers. It's called, I got to make sure I have it. Go Teen Writers, all one word, go, like going out there, goteenwriters.com. And Jill Williamson, who runs it, has a specific page of character archetypes. It's very, it's very full. You've got every archetype you can think of. So that would be perfect. And then the other things to think about is to twist those stereotypes. Once you get the archetypes, go ahead and still add a twist to them. All right. Change them up a little bit so they're not so cliche and obvious to the character. Okay, so other ways you can do the other ways you can show the character's personality is through their unique features. So the small bits of conversation, the way they change or react to situations, their quirks, their flaws, all these unique mannerisms that I discussed previously. These are all things that are going to help differentiate your characters and make them different than other characters in other books. So the one thing I just wanted to show to you, which I think Surabhi is going to send in a follow-up email, is these would be books that I would recommend. This one is called The Emotion Thesaurus. It's by Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi. And basically, whatever emotion you want your character to bring across, you just turn to that. You want them to feel embarrassed? Hey, look at that. You got a whole lot of things you can do physically, physical cues that will show them. All right. So if they're embarrassed, they're going to freeze in place. They're going to possibly flinch away from touches. It may escalate to humiliation, and then it takes you to the next page. So I've got the ones I have here is this one, and then I've got the positive trait thesaurus and the negative trait. There are actually way more books in the series. So if you look those up, I keep those handy when I'm writing. And then that way you also don't fall into saying the same thing over again. You know, the kind of the weed words that a character that you may say when you're describing the character. So having said that, I'm going to move on to a little bit of exercise here. And I don't believe, since we don't have the slides up, I'm going to go ahead and read it out loud to you. And I just want you to think about this literary example. I'm going to read, they're going to be short excerpts.
Laura, just 1 second. Do you want to try and see if you can share screen?
That is a good question. If I share screen, I won't be able to see my notes then. That's the only problem.
It hasn't frozen up in a while, so
you want to try?
Give it a shot if you want.
Yeah, it would be great. It would be one of the last slides where it says literary examples. I believe it's going to be the second slide, I think. Let me see. We'll see if you can get it up there. Yeah, it'll be the second literary example slide.
All right. Yep. Let me see here.
And the question is, will I be able to see my notes then?
You can.
I can. Okay.
Share. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh, yes.
That's what I meant. Yeah. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah. Okay. So the top one is taken from a young adult fantasy novel called This Woven Kingdom. The author is Tara Maffei. And I just want you to read along with me and just think about what this is the very beginning. This is our introduction to Eliza. It says, Eliza, stitch in the kitchen by the light of star and fire, sitting, as she often did, curled up inside the hearth. Soot stained her skin and skirts in haphazard streaks, smudges along the crest of a cheek, a dusting of yet more darkness above one eye. She didn't seem to notice. So just from these few sentences, Eliza hasn't spoken yet. We don't know her backstory. We don't know anything about why she's doing this. But just from the description of how she's sitting and what she's doing, you can see in your mind's eye that she's stitching, she's sewing something late at night. She's got soot all over her. She's clearly not from a rich family. It says she didn't seem to notice. So this would lead you to believe that this is her normal lifestyle. This is normally how she is, right? She has not been punished. She's not from a rich family that's been punished to do this. This is normal for her. So we now know she's definitely from a poor economic place. And by the fact that she's stitching by star and fire, well, that's going to lead you to questions of why. Is this her job, or is this because it's the only time that she has during the day? So what does it sounds like she does hard labor, right? What is it she does? And in the future, in this novel, she is a servant actually, and she does get a job within a rich household. And when the lady of the house comes in, she starts to tremble and get scared and drops something and breaks it. And that right there makes sense to the reader, because we've already seen that she's comfortable in front of the firelight, with soot all over her, right? She's comfortable at home, right? She's going to this other house is what makes her nervous and what kind of, shakes her nerves. So this is a really good example of just kind of setting the scene of that character. And then the other one I want to do is the bottom one, which is John Grisham's Sparring Partners. This is the only novel I actually didn't read out of this, but I picked up the book in the very beginning and I thought, this is a great description. It says, Jake was at his desk upstairs making little progress with the stack of paperwork he'd been neglecting for weeks, even months. With no court hearing scheduled for days, it should have been a good time to catch up with the old stuff. The fish files that every lawyer had, for some reason, said yes to a year ago, and now just wanted to go away. The upside of a small town law practice, especially in your hometown, was that everyone knew your name, and that was what you wanted. It was important to be well thought of and well liked with a good reputation. When your neighbors got in trouble, you wanted to be the man they called. The downside was that their cases were always mundane and rarely profitable, but you couldn't say no. The gossip was fierce and unrelenting, and a lawyer who turned his back on his friends would not last long. Now, I don't know what this book is about because I didn't read it, but I'm going to take a pretty good guess that his flaw is that he can't say no, right? It's been well established that he's a small town guy. He wants, his deepest desire is to keep up that good reputation. And so he can't say no. And I have a feeling he's going to not be able to say no to something and he's going to get in over his head. He also doesn't like gossip, right? It says gossip is fierce and unrelenting. That's going to be a little foreshadowing that probably one of the problems he's going to have is that there is going to be some bad gossip about him. So right there, we already know what kind of man he is. He's not a slacker who sleeps in, right? You can imagine him. He's probably dressed in a suit and tie. He's got his shoes buffed, right? And he's showing up for work with a nice trimmed haircut and shaved face because he's trying to impress his townspeople. So anyway, those are just a few examples. The last thing I want to leave you is as a little exercise, which we didn't have time to get to today, which is totally fine. This actually works best on your own. So as you take all of these ideas and you put them together, one of my favorite ways to really discover what a character's, a true personality of a character is by doing what I call like the 5-minute writing session. It doesn't have to be 5 minutes. You can do 3 minutes. You can do however long you want, 10 minutes. But what you want to do is think about the character you're going to write about. Sit down with a pen and paper. I suggest you do a pen and paper, kind of old school, because it gives your brain, you're writing slowly. It gives your brain a little time to think. And go ahead and write anything from the main character's point of view. It doesn't have to be first person. It can still be third person, but it's write anything from that main character's point of view. It can be a scene that's going in the book. It can be a scene that you make up that will never make it in the book. But go ahead and write that and try not to stop. Don't stop and think about what's going to happen next. Keep writing. And what'll happen is, as you're writing this scene, you want to just keep the pen moving. What is happening in the scene? How is my main character not only approaching it, but reacting to it? And you'll find that you'll start using the same words over again, maybe the same phrases over again. But you want to ask, what are they thinking and what are they feeling in this instance? And so, for example, my main character from my first book that was published, Keen, I didn't know that the main character, Kane, was very angry. I had written the book, but I didn't know she had anger towards her situation in life until I sat down and did this. And I started thinking about her motivations and of where she was in school and how she's with her dad, and her mom died when she was young. And I had her start going. And as I'm writing it out, it kept coming up. I'm angry. I'm angry because of this. I'm angry because of that. And that really gave me some good insight to actually tweak a little bit of her character throughout the novel. So this is something you can take with you, and you can do, like I said, from major characters, minor characters. But I would suggest you do this 5-minute writing exercise, because I think it's going to help you dive a little bit deeper into your characters. So that is all I have for you. And we can go ahead and open up to questions now. If you have any, please type them in the chat.
Yeah, thanks so much, Laura.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Before we go into questions, we are going to take a group picture.
Okay.
Get my screen back. Screen thing. Yeah. And Josh, you're with us, right?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Yay. Okay. So
All right, so I'll give you a countdown and then I'll do it.
Thank you.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, there's a lot of technical glitches today. She had a slide presentation, and so it might have seemed like things were like she just dived in. So sorry about that. But yeah, thank you. Appreciate your patience. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat for us, and then she will respond to the questions. I do have one question to start with. So when you're writing in any fiction, so how do you start? Like, do you do multiple characters at one time, or do you do one character first and then flesh him or her out? What's your process like?
Yeah. I think it all depends on how that story comes to you. If it's a story that's got, a main character and maybe one side character, I'll go ahead and just dive in with them and see where it takes me as far as what other characters would work well with this main character. As far as, is there going to be a mentor character? Is there going to be kind of like a foil character that kind of gets in there, causes problems? And sometimes they come later, but it depends, because if it's a story idea that I have that does have a bigger cast, I try to go ahead and just I may not have names, but get down some basic personalities of this one's going to be the sarcastic one. This one's going to be the one that doubts everything. And this one's going to be the backstabber, and kind of just allow it to go at the same time. So honestly, I would be flexible on that and just see what works for you. If you start going down one road and, the whole proverbial writer's block, or, you're having problems with it, try a different technique and go the other way, because it may be the better way for you. And it may be why you were having problems. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just going to look into the chat if anybody has any questions. Yeah. Larry and Peggy say our sister-in-law lives in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, hope you're living up in that area.
Yes, I went to college in Philadelphia, so it's a good place.
Okay, I see Deepa has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you share your experiences with traditional versus independent publishing, pros and cons?
Yes. Thank you for asking us. I did say I was going to talk about this. So yeah, basically in today's market, I mean, at one time it was kind of looked down upon, like, oh, you only self-published if you couldn't do it. But now publishers are actually fighting for some of these indie authors, because the indie authors are realizing that they can do it on their own. It's a little bit easier. They don't have restrictions and timelines. And so it's whatever you choose. As far as traditional publishing, the very big publishing houses you're going to have an agent. But on the flip side, there are plenty of middle range publishers that will be able to get your books out. They don't require an agent, which is nice. You can directly submit to them, and all of that will always be on their website. So the main thing to remember with traditional is always follow whatever directions they give on their website, because otherwise they won't look at it and it will be a waste of time for you. But the beauty of traditional is that with the middle level, they're probably not going to give you an advance, but you'll get royalties. And they will go ahead and provide the editor for you, and they'll provide the cover art, which can be costly. So that is the beauty of that. But then on the flip side, the best part about indie publishing is that you have full control over those things. So if you do pay the money out for an editor and you don't like how it was done, you can always go, you can go back and forth with them and change some things up. Whereas with a traditional, their final editor is going to say, this is kind of how we're doing it. They have a little bit more control of it. So also you have control of your cover art. You have control of your timeline, which, as you know, many books take from the time an author signs with a traditional publishing company. It usually takes about 18 months to come out, as you know, from like when you go to the bookstore or the library and you're waiting for the next book to come out. It can take some time, but if you choose to do it yourself, you can make your own timeline. And there are so many resources out there to do it yourself. Really good cover artists out there. You just have to do a little research. Really good editors. A good editor will be willing to provide you with a sample of their work. Oftentimes they'll even allow you to go ahead and send in a few pages, and they'll edit it for free so you can see what they're like. So ultimately, I would not go through a service that asks you to pay straight out to do everything for you. If you're paying for it, they're probably more in it to make the money. A traditional publisher, like I said, you'll make royalties, but they're willing to take a chance on you because they're paying for the editing and the cover art. So you are always free to reach out to me and talk to me, because if you have any more questions about that, because I'd love to talk to you. So, and just to let you know, I have done both. Like I said, my first 2 books were through a traditional publisher, and now I'm also doing indie, and I've had a good experience with both. So.
Thank you for that answer.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Just waiting if there are any more questions. And because she said literary agent and editor, I'm going to put a plug for my upcoming 2 Writers Beyond Borders. The next meeting is on 21st September. And I'm having a literary agent who lives in the United States. She was in New Jersey the last time I spoke with her. Her name is Priya Darswamy, and she will be talking about how do you query for literary agents. So please mark your calendar, spread the word, because I think that is a question every writer has. I've done the manuscript, I've done this, I've done all the work, now what? How do I find an agent? So she's going to be talking about all of that. And I'm going to have an editor as well in the month of October. So you're covered, guys. I'll give you as much information as I can on those 2 things. I don't see any more questions. Okay, I guess everybody's saying it's a great presentation. All of it has been great. So if you don't have any more questions, I am going to go ahead and just close up early. Thank you so much, Laura. Yes, Larry, I will. Yeah. So since Larry and Peggy, you guys registered, so you will be getting a thank you email from the library with the photo and the details for the future program as well. And I'm going to quickly put a plug for my in-person workshop for those of you who are living in Charlotte. I have something coming up on 10th of September. So if you're in Charlotte, you'll hear from me. Watch out for my social media. It's going to be writing an art. But the next Writers and Beyond Borders is on 21st of September, same time. And we'll have a literary agent. So thank you guys for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Josh. Bye.